Welcome back to another edition of Cover One Buffalo. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Quinn, and joining me, as always, Nate Geary. What is happening tonight, my man?
Getting ready for this Bills Facebook live thing that we were just talking about before we got on air. I'm pretty excited to see who ends up winning that 3rd and 5 situation. Is it Rod Streeter or Jerry Hughes? And I'm putting my money on Rod Streeter.
You think so? You think he's a
Rod
baller?
Well, generally speaking, I feel like offensive players are better at Madden than defensive players. So.
Interesting. I'd like to see the stats, PFF grades on that.
I feel like I'm a better Madden player than people because I played quarterback and I just know like what to run against you.
Interesting. Okay, I haven't played. I didn't play last year's Madden. I've been out of the Madden game for a little bit, but I would like to take that challenge on to see if you're better than me. Maybe we can Google hang out that a little Cover One Madden.
It's not
challenge.
a bad idea.
Hey, I got some good ideas, man. But we got a lot to talk about today, man. We got a lot of hot takes to deliver to these fine folks that have showed up to talk to us. Before we get into that, obviously, we got some business to attend to because this is the Cover One podcast, and Cover One is your one-stop shop for all your Bills analysis and more than Bills. We got a guy writing for the Giants, Cowboys. We got a bunch of draft analysis that'll be starting up once the college football season gets ramped up here. So any fans of college football and draft prospects definitely going to want to stay tuned for that. But if you're here tonight, you're here for the Buffalo Bills, and nobody covers the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. Obviously, like Cover One, just the insight, the analysis you get from us over at Cover One. Go check it out. We got articles dropping all the time. There were some great pieces on Dable that Rob Quinn just put out this week. So you're going to want to get on that. Definitely head over to the YouTube channel that you're at right now. Subscribe because Eric's been doing some great stuff after the preseason games. You broke down AJ McCarron, broke down Nathan Peterman, broke down Josh Allen, all on individual videos. That's some great stuff. Did you get a chance to check that out yet, Nate?
I haven't really gotten a chance to reestablish life since I got back from my long weekend in Baltimore. So I have a lot of catching up in my real job to do because I've been so far behind. So I haven't been able to. But it was one of my things where I was sort of bummed because Eric texted me on Sunday and was like, "Hey, you want to do a Nate Peterman breakdown?" I'm like, "Yes," but unfortunately, I was out of town. So. But I have the feeling that Eric and I will probably be hitting the film room following Friday's game because we'll have all weekend to do it, which is actually nice. Is what I like about these early week games, these Thursday, Friday games, gives us time to get some content off for the following week.
Really
get that stuff ramped up. Right? Yeah, exactly, and watch it a couple of times.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, nothing better than waking up Saturday morning with a coffee and just rewatching the game and digging into it. And if you want to be a premium member, it's a great deal right now. We're offering $10. You can be a premium member for the entire year and you get access to our premium content, film room, Slack channel. The list goes on and on. And in the Slack channel, though, before these videos come out, Eric is telling us the things that he's seeing, and he's posting videos and saying, "Hey guys, I picked up on this. Hey guys, I'm a little worried about this, or I'm really excited about X." So that's some of the great stuff, the behind the scenes stuff that for $10 for the whole year, you get access to first. And then, not to mention you get to talk to Nate and I whenever you want. So
sure.
What a better benefit is that? So anyways, head over to cover1.net, check it out. Tons of articles up right now. While you're there, take a look at our app, iOS, Android, download it direct to your phone. Nate, you use the app all the time. Did you even get to use the app while you're out in the middle of nowhere?
I didn't, but I sure as hell got updates and push notifications. Like I just got at exactly 7:00, right as we went on. I got a push notification that we were going on. So
look at that.
So it was nice to have those push notifications, and of course, it's free. So
it is free, and that's our favorite.
I paid more for my FaceOver app, which is very important as well.
That is a very important app. Anyway, so let's get right into it tonight because I've been dying to talk to you since this Panthers game took place. Let's talk about that a little bit. I did the post-game show, so I got to talk to Rob a little bit about it. Had a chance to digest it, watch it 3 or 4 times over now, get everybody else's analysis of the game, a little bit over analysis right now, that game. But let's talk about what are some of the key takeaways that you saw watching that Panthers game.
You saw an image of him before you closed off the screen presenter there. Brian Dable really, really impressed. I mean, not just me, but I think a lot of people. I thought Nathan Peterman really impressed a lot of people. Obviously, his only one incompletion was a good throw that went through the hands of Chris Ivory and into the hands of the literally played a perfect game. And then AJ McCarron comes in, he gets one sack on the first play, which everyone's like, wow, this is what we saw in training camp. Like, can this guy not take sacks? Like, and then he really doesn't take another sack for the remaining portion of that second quarter, brings the team down, has a nice throw to Brandon Riley up the sidelines, has a nice throw to Rod Streeter over the middle on third down. So you saw a lot of nice things from both quarterbacks. And then Josh Allen came in and did exactly what we sort of expected him to do, and struggle at times with accuracy. But I think that you saw a very different play caller in Brian Daboll from the first half with those two quarterbacks, of a more calculated and more of a game plan, where in the second half you just saw they were letting Josh Allen let it rip. And they were letting him throw deep field. I think I counted 6 vertical shots down the field from Josh Allen out of I think 19 attempts, which is a pretty remarkable number considering I think you saw 1 from Nate Peterman and 1 from AJ McCarron. So those are the things that stood out to me from that first preseason game. I'm excited to sort of see what this week culminates to on Friday, because we saw a lot of Josh Allen all week with the number 2s, which has been very different from what we saw from the other 13 practices we saw at St. John Fisher. Now all of a sudden he's been practicing with the 2s. I wonder if that remains, and I wonder if you see maybe McCarron start the game with the 1s, and then Peterman come in on the next drive, and then you see just mostly Josh Allen for the rest of the game. I think that the player that has the most to gain from preseason action is going to be Josh Allen. The other 2 guys are very similar. They're close players. Nathan Peterman and AJ McCarron don't have a lot separating them two. Other than, and I was talking about this with my buddy today at work, it's AJ McCarron has a slightly stronger arm, but it's like a very slight difference in arm strength. I have been really impressed with the accuracy I've seen from Nathan Peterman, and we're going to see how it plays out. But I think that in terms of the rest of this preseason, I think it's up to the Bills to get Josh Allen as many reps as possible to put him on the same level as the other 2 guys.
Yeah, and you say, maybe AJ McCarron has a slightly better arm, but then to counter that, I think Peterman has slightly better anticipation and timing.
And better feet, in my opinion. Yeah. I think he can move a little better, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, they are similar, though. I do agree with that. I think they're similar, and we talked about it the last time, I think last week, that one of those 2 really needs to separate themselves. I don't know if that happened. Obviously, Peterman did play better.
I thought Peterman... I think after the first drive, I was like, I didn't really think anybody can go into that first game and win the job, but it was hard for me to not look at Nathan Peterman as having the best game out of the 3 quarterbacks, and I didn't think it was close. That's how impressed I was with how he ran the offense. But I mean, they also didn't run one of the same personnel packages at all during those first 2 drives with Peterman, and they ran a different play every time. I mean, Brian Daboll threw the vanilla thing out the book, and they went after the Panthers, and the Panthers were not ready for it.
Yeah, I do think I think Peterman played very well. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I would like to see the way Kelvin Benjamin was playing was super impressive to me. And those big receivers, I would have liked, you talk about Josh Allen pushing the ball vertically down the field. I think some of the things that we saw with Josh Allen were an impact of not having decent receivers that were getting open downfield. We didn't have the all 22, but it did look like at times guys just weren't getting open. Guys weren't finding their spots. And I think if you give him an opportunity to play with some better receivers, you might see some of that vertical game not go away. That's who he is, but I think you'll see some of that mellow out a little bit. Yeah, he'll never be an anticipation thrower, I don't think, like a Peterman is. But it did help Peterman a little bit to have those 4 receptions to Kelvin Benjamin, help that afternoon a little bit for that first 2 drives. So I do want to see somebody else get in with the 1s, and then I think we'll be able to see that separation. If AJ McCarron gets the start this week, goes in with Kelvin Benjamin in the 1s and doesn't perform the way Peterman does, then I think we have that answer and we have that separation that we need to see. And then it becomes that 2-man competition that I need to see for the final 2 weeks of preseason.
And I think a lot of people were looking into why did the Bills wait till game day to announce their starter? And I actually saw a theory I actually kind of agreed with, and I do think, in a sense, the Bills were protecting Nathan Peterman a little bit, because I think that the plan was to start him all along. And I just wonder what if the Bills had announced, after the second practice that Nathan Peterman was going to start the first preseason game. I think there would have been a lot of pushback from the fan base. I think there would have been a lot of pushback from media. So I think in a way that it was a way to sort of protect Nathan Peterman from that criticism that, he earned to a certain extent by having 5 interceptions in the first half of a game. But that was last season. And just like Browns fans, they want to look forward to this season. I think a lot of people that are going to be criticizing Nathan Peterman also need to do that as well and sort of forget about what had happened in the past with him, because it's a new year. And I think right now we're seeing a new Nathan Peterman.
Yeah, no, I was very impressed with what I saw, but I really was not super impressed with Adrian McCarron. Some of the things he did were nice to see. But I got to say, I was super impressed with Josh Allen from what I saw. But we'll get into quarterbacks a little bit more and that rotation and timeline and what we expect. Some other things I took away from the game, and I'd love to get your opinion on, is I love this battle at running back behind Shady. I thought Chris Ivory had that nice catch and run. Obviously, he had the drop that led to the interception, but he had that nice run after the catch. Marcus Murphy looked fantastic. Yeah. Cadet, I think, is still a strong candidate. That's a super interesting battle to me over these next couple of weeks. What did you take away from the game there?
Yeah, I think a lot of us shoot in Travaris Cadet as that third running back, and I think so did the coaching staff, with the idea that someone was going to have to upseat him. And so far, I mean, Joe Biscaglia, Channel 7 had Marcus Murphy as his camp MVP, and I couldn't agree more with him. The practices, I was there. Obviously, that game, he stood out to me as both a pass-catching back and a running back, as the type of player where if LaShawn McCoy goes down, he can absolutely go in there and take 15 to 20 carries and be productive. And I think he showed that. And obviously Cadet and Taiwan Jones had been hurt, and he sort of just came on the scene. I really like what Marcus Murphy, he impressed. He really stood out to me in that game against the Panthers. And I'm sort of looking forward to him maybe potentially taking that third spot away from Cadet.
Yeah, I think that he definitely can. So I'll be interested to watch that too. Another guy that I'm interested to watch and see if he can develop week to week is Keith Ford, because I thought he showed some decent things.
I think he's going to ultimately be a practice squad guy, with the idea that maybe he could be next year's Marcus Murphy. But I think right now, Taiwan Jones and Cadet, one of those guys, if they're deciding to keep 4 backs, one of those guys are here. I think Marcus Murphy's got a spot in this roster.
I think that Keith Ford is a practice squad guy, but I would like to see a little bit more development out of him, I guess is what I was going to say. Is I saw a lot of times where he was supposed to chip for the quarterback. I think a couple of the sacks were a little bit on him. He didn't go chip, and that's something that it's really hard for a young rookie running back coming in the league to learn pass protection. They just don't do it that much in the college game. So, but I think a lot of fans are interested in Ford, so I do want to continue to see him throughout the year. What'd you get from the wide receivers, though, man? Because nothing really stood out to me after that starting group. It kind of fell flat to me. Obviously, Zay wasn't playing and Corey Coleman was, and so what do we have behind that starting group? Is it just guys that we like because they're on the Bills, or are these guys legitimate guys that can play in the NFL level?
I was a little upset or frustrated that Cam Phillips didn't get any game action. Obviously, due to the injury, he didn't play, and he ended up dressing but didn't ultimately play. I think he's been another really interesting camp standout as a potential practice squad guy, or maybe he pushes for that 6th, or if they decide 7, which I think would be pretty insane to keep 7 receivers at this point, unless one of them or 2 of them really are just going to be your special teams ace. So yeah, I was upset that we didn't get to see Cam Phillips. I thought Robert Foster had an absolutely terrible game. But supposedly Sal told me this week that he sort of had a bounce back week at practice, but I just don't think he doesn't have a shot in hell in making the roster as being a guy that had a lot of hype in the spring. But that's sort of like Robert Foster's career at Alabama, a lot of hype, but not a lot of production on the field. So I tweeted it. I could have felt totally fine if after that game on Friday, or what was it, Thursday, that on Friday that they cut Robert Foster. Like, that's how bad of a performance I had. I thought he gave up on the one deep ball. I think he could have absolutely laid out and caught that ball from Josh Allen. He was just out of his fingertips. I mean, he should have had he had an opportunity to make that ball or to make that catch and just didn't lay out for it. And that's the kind of thing that, I mean, you not. And that was, it was disappointing to me that he didn't lay out for that.
Yeah, I think both those deep balls. I saw the one deep ball analyzed.
Well, the other one too, I think I know what you're talking about, is where Josh Allen rolls out to the left and throws all the way across his body to the right. And essentially, Robert Foster just gave up on the play.
Yes.
And didn't really think that Josh Allen could make. But I think this is going to be something that Bills wide receivers are going to have to get used to, is that you cannot give up on a play when Josh Allen's back there, because he can throw the ball wherever he wants on the football field.
One of the analysis guys I follow tweeted about when plays break down, for another team and how the wide receivers find the open spots. And I retweeted that this week and said the Bills receivers really need to get on this, especially if Josh Allen's going to play, because that is what is going to lead to big plays. But Foster, when you're that guy in training camp that's fighting for a job, you can't give up on plays. Not on a Sean McDermott team. You can't just stop running before the whistles end. So he needs to, make those types of plays. And that other one that you're talking about where he could have reached out, I agree. I think you got to try to at least make a play on that ball. And everyone kind of knocked Josh Allen's accuracy on that deep ball, but the dude put it up like 60, 65 yards in the air.
Right. No problem.
Yeah, no problem. And it was still within an arm's reach if he lays out a little bit. So those are hard accuracy throws to make. He gave the receiver a chance to make a play on the ball. That's all you can really ask.
Yeah, and they were impressive. I mean, the way that he could just flick the ball 65, 70 yards in the air down the field is
crazy. Something
I've never seen. And, I've been around a lot of guys with great arms. I mean, through my playing career and being in training camps. And I've just never quite seen anything like Josh Allen before. So
yeah. And then the one last thing that really stood out to me that I want to get your opinion on, and we've talked about it quite a bit on this show, is the defensive backs, man. That depth at the defensive back. I think walking out of that game, after watching that game, I feel worse about it than I felt when we talked about the defensive backs. And we weren't super happy about it. If you go back and watch, we weren't super happy about the depth. I'm less happy about the depth at that position now. What can the Bills do at this point are any of these guys going to be able to step up and be backup depth guys?
I'm really surprised that the Bills weren't the first team to call Orlando Scandrick after he was released this week by Washington. I'm really surprised because although I don't think he can be an outside threat at this point in his career, I do think that he's a very, very viable and a starting caliber nickel or slot cornerback in the league. And right now, I think that's maybe their biggest question mark. I don't think that he is the answer for your slot corner. We talked about it. Leonard Johnson's already signed for another team. And so the guy that at least knows the system is no longer available. And thirdly, I don't know that Taron Johnson is ready at this point in his young career to be a full-time starting nickel corner. So absolutely, I think there's going to be opportunities for this team to pick up a veteran that might get cut due to, a young guy like Taron Johnson on another team really maybe pushing. But I do think that ultimately, we've seen many a Brandon Beane August trades. I think that's totally still up there. I think right now, as we look at the rest of the roster, that outside wide receiver, which I think they did upgrade with the Corey Coleman trade, and I think has played itself out. And I think Sale made a really good point too about Zay Jones is we just don't know what we're going to get from Zay Jones. Yeah. And from what we've seen early, he's absolutely coming with a new mindset, sort of a mindset, which I guess I really wasn't expecting. And it was something that stood out to me the first day that he was out there. And I didn't really love it, to be honest with you, because of what we saw in the offseason and the troubles that he had last year. But then it took me a little while to open up and sort of appreciate the fact that he came into this season looking as though he needed to step up his leadership game. And that in itself is big. But, we just don't know where we're going to get from him on the field. And if he could be better than he was last year and take a step forward, that's huge for that room. I think the Bills wide receiver room is better than we think. I think it's the defensive backfield right now. And not specifically the defensive backfield, but the cornerback position. I think that right now, outside your top two, are very, very concerning.
Yeah, I've been saying the wide receiver room was better than I think a lot of fans thought. And that was before the Corey Coleman thing. And I agree with you. I think Coleman makes it better. And I think Zay is going to step that game up. So I'm not as worried about that. Like you said, I do think it's defensive backs. I'd like to see some depth at the linebacker position as well. I think everybody's really happy with how the defense performed last year, but there's still some issues on this defense. I don't want to fool anybody into thinking this is a top 5 defense just because they were good a year ago and McDermott's a defensive coach and they have nice pieces on this team. They got young linebacking core that's going to take some time.
I think too, sorry to interrupt you, but the player they brought in, and I can't think of his name, the linebacker from the Giants, Keenan Robinson. Thank you. It's been interesting because it's been noted the last 2 days at training camp that he'd been taking on and off reps with the first team defense.
Saw that, yeah.
And he's a guy that has had some injuries over the course of his career, but a viable starter. So I think the depth at the linebacker position, as long as he can play all 3 positions, which I believe he can in the 4-3, should be taken care of to an extent. But yeah, I just think in terms of if Vontae Davis were to go down, and I think if anything, you need to sort of plan for that at this point in his career. Obviously, in his 30s, has had some injury issues over the course of his career, especially as of late. I think it's important that you have a guy that you feel comfortable with to take his place if he were to miss games. Trey has proved to be a very durable player, but it's only one season, and you just never know.
Yeah, no, I think you have to expect injuries at the cornerback position. Somebody writes in Oborum. I don't know if I'm butchering that, but can Bush play cornerback? I don't know. Maybe he can come down. I know he was playing a little bit of that big nickel. They were
but that's
I don't know if it was a big nickel, but that was a very specific package, right?
Those are very specific packages. Those are going to be going up against lineups that you wouldn't necessarily see a base offense or base defense run. I don't believe he's suited to play like a slot corner position, but I do think that he will play on the field, knowing that you don't necessarily have a true slot corner right now. But I think in an ideal world, like, there's somebody on another roster right now that can come in and potentially be a starting slot corner for this team.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And while we're talking about roster moves, we'll jump ahead a little bit and then come back to some of the topics that we had going. Trent Murphy's injury, man. This is a guy that we really had not seen since he signed with the Bills. He had the red no contact on all throughout minicamp and stuff like that. Comes into training camp with that. Now he's got this groin, is just kind of nagging injury. I don't know if you've ever pulled a groin, but they're pretty nasty, man. Yeah. If you don't get it fixed now, that's something that's going to linger all season long. We saw it with Stevie Johnson for a few years. He had that groin injury that just wouldn't go away. Is Trent Murphy, are we going to get this guy back? Do the Bills have to start making calls for the guys around the league? Because Shaq Lawson still has flaws. I know people were excited about the way he played. When I look back at that tape, I saw a guy that still can't make more than one move. He still has no game plan when he's going for the rush. So he might be bigger, stronger, faster, but he's still super flawed, and I don't trust him to be out there as a 3-down guy. So what do we do if Trent Murphy can't go?
Well, I think that they do have a succession plan, and I think if Murphy isn't able to go week one, and you're probably going to rotate guys. Eddie Yarbrough is a guy that sticks out that'll likely get more playing time in place of Murphy. But obviously, it's a disappointment because you did put a lot of funds into Trent Murphy. But I think this goes along the lines of guys that are coming back from a knee injury like Trent Murphy is. You spend so much time rehabbing that leg. And this is why a lot of times you get injuries to the opposite leg because you've spent so much time working on re-strengthening and working on that injury that you have a tendency to forget about or not necessarily work as diligently on the other side. This kind of goes for the same for your right shoulder. You don't get a lot of work with your left shoulder. Obviously, you're not left-handed. So, I definitely am a little worried at this point, but I think that the best thing you could do is if you're the Bills and Trent Murphy is shut him down for the rest of the preseason and hope that by, week 4 of the preseason that he is feeling better and can start to push a little bit. But you're right. The groin injury just isn't anything to mess around with, especially at the position where he's a lot of stopping and going. And not only that, but starting from a position that you're stopped, you need that sort of quick twitch. And without, a healthy groin, it's damn near impossible playing his position.
Yeah. And the big concern I have right now is not that he won't be able to get back physically into it, but that position requires a lot of communication, especially a guy that has not played on this team with any of these guys before. You want to kind of see him getting these reps and getting that communication in, because when the offense comes out and throws something different, you need to be able to look to the guy next to you and know what he's doing and know what he's thinking. And that's valuable time right now that he's not getting that somebody else is. So I think it's definitely going to hurt the team overall if he can't be ready to go by week 1. But something interesting to watch. I know a lot of people are speculating Khalil Mack again. The phone calls for Khalil Mack if he can't go. I'm not quite there yet. But
I'm also not at the point where it's, well, if Trent Murphy's hurt, we should go after Khalil Mack.
If you want Khalil Mack, go after him anyway.
Right. It doesn't matter whether Trent Murphy's healthy or Trent Murphy's a 12 sack a year guy. If you're going after Khalil Mack, I mean, make the move. But I saw a tweet from Chris Trapasso today and sort of lining up maybe a potential trade package or compensation it would cost. I don't think really anybody knows what the Raiders are doing, much less what they require back in a trade for Khalil Mack. But it's fun to think about. It's fun to speculate about. But I think in all reality, I did find it interesting that a Vegas line had the Bills with the best odds. And typically speaking, those Vegas lines aren't putting stuff up there if they don't have some sort of inside information that they're putting those odds based on. So I thought that was very interesting, but I wouldn't read too much into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I saw that same tweet you mentioned. And like you said, we don't know, but I would think that my first thought was Oakland would probably hang up the phone if those were the offers that Buffalo presented. to do it, but there's always some silly team out there that.
And John Gruden does weird stuff, like he just does. And Reggie McKenzie,
is he really in control over there? We don't know.
Right, we don't know.
So, all right, we talked about that. One last guy I want to talk about, a bubble guy here that was interesting this week. I don't think he's a bubble guy, but I thought it was really interesting to see Nick O'Leary sliding to playing with the threes, Jason Kroom sliding up, getting some time with the ones, things like that. Is this something to watch? Is O'Leary kind of teetering on that bubble? Where is he at? I think he makes the team, but it's interesting that he's been demoted essentially.
So let me tell you, I don't think he's on the bubble. I think he's firmly outside of the top 4 players that they're going to be at the position. I think that he is a lock to be cut. That's where my thought process is right now. Yes.
Is it Kaiir Lee? Is Lee?
It's Kaiir Lee as you're blocking. I think that Logan Thomas, whether he's your third or tight end, is a lock to make the roster because of what he brings versatility-wise, height-wise, mismatch-wise.
And if you watch the tape on Logan Thomas, guys, he actually blocked.
He's turned into a bit of a – that's correct. So they really liked what they've seen from Kaiir Lee so far in this training camp, and I know they love what they've seen from Jason Kroom. Not only that, but he's dating, the Pagula's daughter. I mean, how are they supposed to cut Jason Kroom? Yeah. He goes to another training camp. Kim Pagula never
well, hopefully he's not dating Kim. That would be bad.
What's the daughter's name? Kelly. I'm sorry, I knew it was a K. But Kelly would never talk to again. So
yeah, it wouldn't be good.
That wouldn't be good.
Kroom, I thought Kroom was a super interesting undrafted free agent. I was super bummed that he got hurt in his first training camp because he comes in as a wide receiver, and I just love that type of versatility in this modern day NFL. And then I think with him, Thomas, Clay, it gives you that plethora of versatility, big targets, and that's what Daboll's going to want. It's
interesting too because O'Leary has really done everything you could have asked from a backup tight end. I mean, he ended the year last year with 22 receptions. That was like 4th or 5th on the team.
So
that was like 4th or 5th on the team in receptions last year. Just because he isn't going to make it on here doesn't mean I think that he won't make it on elsewhere in the league. There's always teams looking for quality backup tight ends, guys that can block, be responsible players in the pass game. But I just think that the athleticism of the other 3 guys and what this offense is trying to do with mismatches and what I've seen in the practices with how they're lining up Logan Thomas and how they're lining up with Jason Kroom and how much they like Kaiir Lee. He's looked really good in terms of a pass catcher as well. He's just fallen out of favor because he just lacks that sort of athleticism and that quick twitch that the other 3 and other 4 guys really have.
Yeah, and when you add in that Clay is a really good blocker, and if Logan Thomas isn't scared to get his head in there and get dirty too, I mean,
it'd be one thing if they felt they could squeeze Lee or Kroom on the practice squad. I just don't think that if they put either of those guys on waivers that they'll make it through the practice squad. And I think that is at the end of the day what will ultimately be the decision. And I think that's going to play a decision in a few guys on this team, specifically the wide receiver position. I think Ray McLeod finds his way out, and you have a tough decision to make with a guy like Brandon Riley. As much as you like Riley, which of those 2 guys do you feel is a better opportunity of passing through waivers? And I think that is Brandon Riley.
Yeah, I think when Corey Coleman got signed, a lot of people said Ray McLeod was done. He was maybe a practice squad guy. I think Ray McLeod is very much the last receiver on this team, but I think he's definitely on the 53-man roster. If I had to put money on it right now, I think a lot of people are into the Cam Phillips thing. I think he's a great candidate.
He's a great candidate. Squad. Yep, I agree.
So it'll be interesting there. So Corey Coleman. We just talked about him. One of the stars of Hard Knocks last night. If you haven't gotten to watch the HBO Hard Knocks at all this year, obviously they're doing the Cleveland Browns. Second episode, almost the first scene of the second episode is kind of a montage of Corey Coleman dropping passes, not giving effort. I don't know how much real, if that's obviously some of those things happen. We didn't get a full picture of it. He walks into Hugh Jackson's office, asks for a trade. He's almost in tears.
Yeah.
This scene rubbed some Bills fans the wrong way and gave some Bills fans cause for concern on the Twitter machine today. I want to get your thoughts on that, man. What did you take from that? I know you've been pretty vocal about Hard Knocks this week, and you and Browns fans have been going at it a little bit, but tell us what you think, man. Here's your time.
I think the Browns are a joke, and it's unfortunate that Hard Knocks has highlighted just what a joke they really are. And
it's not good for the NFL.
It's not. The level of incompetence that you see from literally the top down. A lot of Browns fans were excited about John Dorsey. I think John Dorsey is terrible. I just don't like his the way he thinks about football. He's old school. I'm done. I'm done with old school thinkers. Like we're in a new time in the NFL. He is the ground and pound type of guy. When that is just, that is just such Buddy Nix thinking. But in terms of, what we saw, I have no problem with Corey Coleman and how he addressed the situation. We just don't know every day what's been happening. But from everything we've heard is that he had a really nice training camp. And you just wondered why they gave him away for nothing. And I think that, first of all, if you're Hugh Jackson, you address the situation. You're the head coach. You know why he's on the second team. You don't have to pretend like you don't know why and Todd Haley's running the offense and he knows why and you're out of the blue. Because if that's the case, first of all, you shouldn't be the head coach if you're out of the blue on why a guy's in the second team. You are the guy who is running every week. You're the guy that is up on the board when a coach says, well, I think we should move him to the second team. You're the guy that's switching the freaking thing on the board to move a guy up or move a guy down. So to say that, well, I don't know, why don't you go ask Todd Haley? There is zero accountability in that franchise. I think it's the best thing that could have happened to Corey Coleman was him getting traded and going to an organization. And listen, and I was talking about this with my boy Damon and JJ Zachariason a little too about this, is that I think that there is a culture here in Buffalo that is far, far different than what you've seen so far on Hard Knocks and what the kind of culture is in Cleveland. And the way that they lead, I think is the wrong way to get to today's young men. To get to today's young guys. Like I truly don't believe the way that Todd Haley's coaching is going to get the most out of any of those players because they just don't respond to being degraded. They don't respond to being told they suck or, like that you're not giving, like those are the guys. And I think this organization has a very, very good understanding of what makes young guys tick, how to maximize a guy that another team simply couldn't get the most out of, specifically thinking Jordan Poyer. Okay. Sure. And where'd he come from? The Browns, who could not maximize everything that he has to give. He comes to the Bills and he's a damn near Pro Bowl player. And I think that says more about the Bills and maybe less about the Browns, or you could say vice versa. It says more about the Bills or more about the Browns and it just the Bills can figure out ways. But Sean McDermott isn't the kind of guy that's going to verbally assassinate you in front of your peers. He's going to bring you off to the side. Is he going to hold you accountable? Absolutely. And he'll do it in front of your teammates, but he's not going to verbally assassinate you on the field or question your manhood or anything like that. And I think that that's just how they lead, how Greg Williams coaches, how Todd Haley coaches, and how it seems like Hugh Jackson just is like, I'm here for a good time. I'm here for good football. And I get to wear the cutoff shirts and, I get the sun shining off my head. I don't know. I have zero respect for that organization. This coaching staff has 1 win in 2 seasons and 24 since 2011. So whatever they're doing is not working. And I think at the end of the day, he comes into a situation where he's got a Terry Robisky, who I think is a great wide receivers coach, a guy that I think is going to potentially be able to maximize what he has in this room. People are talking about it being the worst wide receiver. Well, I have news for you. Like the Jets right now, go look what they've got going on. Terrell Pryor's getting intimidated by DJ Swearinger, who's not good at football. So, like at the end of the day, I think he's in a better situation now than he was a week ago.
Right.
I think there's less distraction with Hard Knocks out. I think that ultimately he has guys that want him to succeed here. And I don't necessarily think that the Browns didn't want Corey Coleman to succeed, but I think there were guys on that team that as much as there's a competition and there's going to be a competition here in Buffalo, that there were guys that would be willing to step on Corey Coleman, see themselves succeed. And I don't get the sense that this is a locker room like that.
Yeah, no, I thought some of the things you said were interesting. I agree that Hard Knocks takes things out of context, right? Like they come in, this guy's been there for a few frustrating years, whether it's injuries or just their team's inability to win games. I mean, that builds frustration and animosity, no matter how you slice it. We've seen that Hugh Jackson is a super awkward dude that has literally zero leadership
or people skills.
No people skills, zero leadership ability. You saw that meeting with the coaches where Todd Haley's addressing serious concerns, and he's just like, well, it sucks for you. I'm the coach. Right. Like, this is not how you deal with it. But then in the vice versa, like you say, a player comes to him asking him a question, and he's like, well, I don't know, go ask your coordinator. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't be the buck stops here kind of guy and then passing the buck when it's convenient. So it definitely shows some things that aren't great right now for Cleveland. But I'm excited for Corey Coleman. I think whether or not you think that was an appropriate way to handle that, I think sometimes guys just need a fresh start. And I was talking to you a little bit before we went live. These guys are professionals, man. This isn't like going to your high school coach and mouthing off to him or something like that.
And I don't think necessarily that in any way he disrespected Hugh Jackson or the Browns by how he approached it. I think it was 3 years of frustration
and passion. He wants to play.
Right. And considering that they use punishment as playing a guy as much as possible and Antonio Callaway, and yet you're going to punish it. Just the consistency is just not there with how they are addressing personnel, how they're addressing players. You can't say that you're punishing Antonio Callaway by playing him every down and then trading away, Corey Coleman because that's his punishment. Like
when I played sports, if my coach told me that because I didn't show up to practice or was late that I was going to get to play the entire game. Okay.
What football player have you ever met that ever wants to come off the field? Like that's not punishment.
Yeah,
that's
just
ridiculous. And here's the thing: like, how can you expect a player to be accountable if he is trying and he wants to know what is it that's holding me back? I need to know why I'm on the second team, and all you have to say is go ask Todd Haley. I'm sorry. Like, how can you expect accountability if you're not accountable yourself?
No, definitely. And so we got the Browns this week. So we've seen them on Hard Knocks. Obviously, yeah, there's a little bit of Corey Coleman stuff. The fans are coming at us on the Twitter universe. What are you expecting out of this game? Tyrod going up against the Bills. What are you expecting this week?
I don't expect it to be Redskins Jets chippiness. I don't think there's going to be cheap shots, but I think that there will be a level of pride on each team. I know Tyrod Taylor wants to come in and he wants to embarrass that Bills defense on however many drives he's going to play.
Right.
I know that Corey Coleman wants on the other side of the ball is going to be similarly inspired like Kelvin Benjamin was the week prior when they played Carolina. So
we got some Jarvis Landry Bills history as well.
Right. There is a lot of animosity right now. Both organizations have had a lot of player movement between each other. Right. There's a long storied history of which team sucks more. And I think that there's going to be some interest. Right. Exactly. It's that nasty lake. It's that mercury in the water. But there's going to be animosity on the field. It should feel a little bit more like a regular season game than a preseason, I bet.
Yeah, I think things are going to be a little chippier than normal. I do think McDermott will have his guys.
Certainly will. This isn't a Rex Ryan team. This isn't a team that's going to get a personal foul, 15-yard penalty on the first drive. That is not the way this team's coached.
And I think if guys get into it, there will be consequences on this on our side. I don't know.
I know there won't be on that side. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll probably be probably championed on that side, to be honest.
The thing I'm most interested to see, though, is comparing – because it sounds like Josh Allen – there's a good chance Josh Allen's going to get some time with something that looks like the twos. It's not going to be all threes like he was playing with last week. And he's going to get some time with some guys a step up from what he was playing with. Baker Mayfield's obviously going to get some time with the twos. That is, I think, the thing I'm most excited to see is these two high-picked quarterbacks that were talked so much about. Bills fans wanted Mayfield. Mayfield looked great.
He did.
His first game. So I want to see those two.
Tyrod Taylor looked good.
Yeah, Tyrod looked great. So I want to see those two though go out. I know what Tyrod is. I've seen Tyrod for a few years. It's Tyrod. I want to see Tyrod do his thing. That's fine. But I can't wait till Mayfield and Allen are in there on the field. I want to see both of them going at it, taking shots at each other, and you just see these two top quarterbacks in their draft class that are going to be compared to each other for the rest of their careers. All these top quarterbacks are. And this is the first time we get to see two of them in the same game. So that's something for me that I'm really excited to watch.
Yeah, I bet you John Dorsey's going to be in a fear bunker too, because a part of me thinks that had they not taken Baker Mayfield, that they would have taken Josh Allen. And because John Dorsey is he probably just gets his rocks off on the size and arm strength that Josh Allen has. Right, the shorts, exactly. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'm kind of looking forward to it, maybe more so than any preseason game I can remember, just because of that quarterback matchup. And I'm excited to see Baker Mayfield. Quite honestly, I liked him coming out. I still like him, and I have an over/under going of which day in January Lincoln Riley is going to be named the head coach of the Browns, because I think ultimately that he's going to be a player they build around, but it needs to be a college style offense. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited to see Baker on that side of the ball. I'm excited to see Nick Chubb. I'm excited to see Higgins, the wide receiver that has been making a lot of hay in Hard Knocks, but in training. Njoku, who's been getting a lot of talked up.
I'm not excited to see Myles Garrett.
No, he's a big boy. It'll be interesting to see. But I'm excited to see the Browns because ultimately they are a joke. But at the same time, they do really have really nice position players. And I said this too.
Drafted in the top for 15.
They were more talented than the Bills last year.
Yeah.
They were, and the Bills all goes back to coaching. And Browns fans can say whatever they want to you on Twitter, but at the end of the day, they've won 1-31 the last 2 years. They've won 24 games since 2011. The Bills have won double that in that time frame. So as bad as you people think the Bills are, a laughing stock to the Bills are, the Bills haven't had less than 6 wins in that time span. The Browns have had 0 wins twice in that time span. So
what's your over under here then for Hugh Jackson being gone?
Week 6.
All right, so by week 6, who takes over? Which one of those terrible coordinators right now?
Browns fans? Maybe the Browns fans just take over. It would be Todd Haley. There's no way that Greg Williams is ever going to be a head coach again, interim or not. And quite honestly, I don't know that this is probably his last stop. To quote,
I really hope it is, man. After seeing the last episode and the way he yells at people, I just want him. I don't think that style of coach, like you'd said, I just think his time is done in the NFL.
Yeah, to quote Dave Matthews Band, this is the last stop.
Oh man, the show took a dive right there. Dave Matthews, but. All right, so we know about that. Let's take some of the questions that we had here because we're going to wrap up a little early to get everybody over to watch that Bills Embedded show that's popping up at 8 o'clock on Facebook. So it's definitely something you're going to want to check out. Looks pretty cool. We have Brett Stotz, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's in the Slack channel, which you can be in the Slack channel too if you become a premium member to cover one. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. He says, which position group do you think needs the most work? Kind of something we touched on earlier, but give us one group specifically you think right now needs the most work.
So the depth at offensive line, I think, is one that sticks out to me, specifically in the interior. We saw, I think, a step for Wyatt Teller. Miles Teller. He's the actor. Wyatt Teller took a step in that game last week. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's a gamer that isn't necessarily going to show it on the one-on-ones, but is a guy that can show up on Sundays and be an effective player for you. John Miller, I thought, I didn't notice him, which is what you want to see from your offensive lineman. And Vlad Dukas, I do worry about Vlad in pass pro. Well. In pass pro, he worries the hell out of me. He over pursues. He gets himself out of his base position a lot, which puts him in not good situations. So I worry about the interior part of that offensive line and obviously the slot corner position and the depth at corner. Those are the two things I think I look at as. And it's interesting, though, that we are at the end of training camp. We're just not talking about the wide receivers as being a problem.
I hate to say that I said that all along, but I did. I'm going to say it. I don't hate to say it. Like, who am I kidding? I want to say that.
Come on.
Anyways, interesting you bring up Teller. I thought he played a great game, and he stands out to me to be a guy like Milano was last year, where he just develops over the year, and sometime in week 10, 11, he is just taking over that position, and he's the guy. The
other thing, too, that I find really interesting in terms of on the opposite side is the three strongest positions on this team, I think, are safety. And the other two are on offense, which I don't think a lot of people outside of the Bills, out of Bills fans or Bills media, would even consider. Being the tight end position, I think, and the running back position as being maybe two of the top 3 strongest positions on the team.
Sure.
And thinking nothing on the offensive side of the ball is strong. Maybe running back because you have LaShawn McCoy, but no one really gives much credence to the signing of Chris Ivory that everyone thinks the Bills overpaid for him. I think he's primed to have a really nice season because he's not going to be asked to play a large role. He's going to be asked to get 5 to 7 carries a game and likely be a threat in the passing game and is a very responsible pass blocker. So I'm excited for Chris Ivory. I'm excited for Marcus Murphy's continued development and Kerry Lee. And we talked about Jason Kroom. I'm excited for Logan Thomas because they've shown so far in training camp that they're going to make concerted efforts to put him one-on-one with corners. And that is advantageous for your offense.
Yeah, I agree with you about the strengths of the team. So one thing, if I had to answer that question, obviously defensive backs is after watching that game, is hands down my biggest concern after your top 2 guys.
You also, I wanted to just tell you to be careful. You don't want to be making too many assumptions on defensive backs in preseason because they're all playing cover 3. They're not playing man up for the most part. They're literally playing zone. And you saw that with starters.
Sure.
After the first drive, there were a lot of open guys that Cam Newton was just overthrowing.
I'm not so much concerned, though, about about guys getting open in preseason, it's the effort. Like Lafayette Pitts had a few times where I just didn't see him breaking on the ball. It's the things that no matter how
that you can adjust to, or the things that you can control.
Yeah. So I think there's just got to be more of that. But one thing that I think I'm a little bit hesitant on that I wasn't really on paper is the linebackers. Obviously, we knew there was some deficiency at the linebacker position as far as depth goes. But Edmonds, I think, has got a big learning curve still to go. I think there's a lot of potential, and he will be good. I'm not worried about him being good. Milano, as much as we all like him, there's a good chance that he takes a slide backwards this year. That sophomore slump does hit guys. Guys have a tough time playing to that rookie, when they come in and play as a rookie. He's a very aggressive guy. I saw a few times where he just bit the run and then he's out of position. So Milano still a little bit of a concern to me. I think the linebackers, there's just that vet isn't there at the middle linebacker spot. There's some concern there. I do think Babich will get it turned around, but if I had to pick another spot, I think that's another spot that I would pick that is a little weaker than I thought. Garrison over in the chat box says, will Trent Murphy ever be healthy? And when will people stop trying to trade a completely useful player in Shaq Lawson?
I don't think until he shows he's
useful,
worthy of what he was drafted. And the problem is if Shaq Lawson was a 4th round pick, no one would have batted an eye on what he's doing. They would say, wow, they're getting a lot of a 4th round pick. But when you're a 1st round pick and you have been touted like he was out of college and had the success that he had in college, and just comes in and looks lost, especially his rookie year after the injury. Listen, we talked about this on a previous podcast. The start of his career, what started off on a negative, and you never want to see that. Doesn't matter what round you are. And he was set up to fail in that defense the first year. Then they switched to a defense that was more advantageous to the style of play that he was the second year, and he was lost, and he was invisible. So I think that you stop talking negatively or stop trying to trade Shaq Lawson when Shaq Lawson turns into the Shaq Lawson everybody thought they drafted in the first round. And then obviously with Trent Murphy, I hope that he can be healthy because I do think that he's a very, very valuable asset to the defense. And there's a reason that Brandon Beane went unpaid him. Brandon Beane does not go out and pay guys for nothing. I think they saw something in him. They saw untapped potential in him. And to be quite honest with you, that Washington defensive line, pound for pound, might be the best in the league. So to say like, oh, well, Washington got rid of him, clearly he wasn't good. That defensive line is 1 to 8, the deepest and probably best defensive line in football. They have been sinking 1st round pick after 1st round after 2nd round pick after free agency. And Ryan Kerrigan is one of the best pass rushers in the league. They've just been sinking picks into that defensive line. So I don't blame them for moving on from a guy considering how much that he got paid. So let's hope he can stay healthy. But I think that if he is healthy, he's going to be probably the best pass rusher, if not the 2nd best pass rusher on the team. Yeah,
to the Shaq Lawson thing, I think the same issue happened to Corey Coleman. I think people expected him to live up to this draft pick, even though I think this happens to players all the time. They get drafted. It's not their choice where they get drafted if they're 1st round, 2nd, 3rd round guy. They might get overdrafted. And I think Shaq Lawson may have been overdrafted, or maybe it just was the wrong team at the wrong time. That happens a lot too. Jalen Rose, a guy I listen to on podcasts about basketball, talks about that all the time with NBA success. If you don't get drafted to the right team, you could become a nobody. But the guys that get drafted to the right team, it's all about the fit. So I think part of Shaq's issue is that I think he was a little bit overdrafted and maybe to the wrong team at the wrong time. But until he's going to have that stigma with him the rest of his career with the Buffalo Bills, because they put so much capital into him, he has to live up to that. And he might not ever be able to live up to that. He might just be the guy who he is. Until he, like you said, until he does live up to that here in Buffalo, I think that trade talk just follows his career. You can't help it but be a fan. That's what happened to Corey Coleman. He wasn't living up to the draft pick, and that talk.
You needed that change of scenery, right?
You need to change the scenery. He's not our 1st round draft pick anymore, so he doesn't have to live up to being a 1st round draft pick here in Buffalo.
He has to live up to a 2022nd, 7th round pick.
He has to live up to my potential skill set. So there's nothing wrong there. So I think as long as that exists for Shaq Lawson, he is going to have to live up to it. So we got one last question here. Where was it? Quick thoughts from Eric Pruden in the chat box here. Quick thoughts on Mike Love, a guy that stood out a little bit at the second half of that game.
If Trent Murphy is to miss any time, I think Love is your 5th defensive end right now. Maybe he's your 4th. But I would think that if he's your 4th, then Eddie Yarbrough or Shaq Lawson aren't making the roster. And I think you're only keeping 4 defensive ends. Love's a great candidate to be on the practice squad. But if Trent Murphy starts the year on the PUP list, I think Love is that candidate for that fourth defensive end spot, and likely will have some time in there.
Is he? I don't know. Is he a candidate for practice squad? Love.
He's been in the league for a couple of years, right?
It's been a couple of years, I think.
I think he's still eligible. I think after the fourth year is when you're no longer eligible, when you're outside the scope of that rookie contract.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong on that. But I think absolutely though. And I think there is scenarios right now where you could see Love on the roster, 100%.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that of maybe moving Trent to the pup and doing that. Mm-hmm. So
especially if you feel that that Trent Murphy's best. He's best going to suit your team this year by being 100% healthy and not letting him play at 85%, which I think the groin and that Jones fracture, those are like two injuries that you don't want to play at 85%.
No, and he's a long-term player, right? He's not a guy that is just get in this year and make some plays. So I agree. Get him healthy, let him play healthy. But yeah, I need to see a little bit. I need to see this from Mike Love for maybe 2 more games.
Agreed.
Before I start considering.
And maybe against some starters.
Yeah, no doubt. So what do you got going on this now that you're back into the mainland and functioning? What do you got going on this week, man?
So I was actually going to send out a little message to our Slack channel and get some ideas on a couple of articles that I'd like to start here in the next couple of weeks. I have a tendency to focus in and zero in on the quarterback situation. I have the feeling after Friday, I'm going to want to probably update people on where my thoughts are at the quarterback position. But there are a couple other, the tight end position's another one too, I really want to kind of dive into. So, if you're in the Slack channel, give me a shout, something you'd like to see me to dive into, whether it's film or, maybe a position battle. I'm definitely taking suggestions after I spent literally days, and getting quotes from guys on the wide receiver position about guys the Bills could potentially go after, and then they go after the guy that I literally at the end was, if I had to choose out of these 5 guys, I'd say Corey Coleman has the best upside. And I pushed period, and I was like, okay, feeling good about that. I'm going to get one more quote before I submit. The next day was when they traded for him. So
yeah. Well, I think you'll get
1,700 words out the window. Just toss it right out.
Hey, the life of a journalist, man. It's not, it's thankless work.
That's right.
So you'll get some ideas in the Slack channel. And speaking of the Slack channel, you can only get in that Slack channel. We keep talking about it because the conversations are really great over there. I'm in there every day talking to these guys because it's just.
I send pics of my hair. You can see topless photos of me.
It's a great channel though. A ton of guys just talking Bills. Eric's popping in there with some film. We have a film Slack portion. We have a fantasy football league starting up in there. So the only way to get in that Slack channel is to become a premium member. You do that by going to cover1.net, going over to the premium section right now, guys, for $10. This is ending very soon. It's going to end this preseason. $10 gets you the full year. That gets you access to all the premium.
Think about what you spend $10 on. You can't even go to McDonald's and get a good meal for $10 anymore.
Interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's like the McDoubles cost like $3 now. Like you can't even go have a good night, get pretty drunk, and go to McDonald's and spend less than $10 now. So it's a no-brainer.
No, and I compare it to, I spend that on draft guides, my memberships to PFF, things like that. Like I spend a ton of money on football, and I get way more out of Cover One as far as the whole year goes. So definitely get over there and get in for that $10. If you do miss the $10, it pops back to the $25 tier level. So still not a bad, we're not getting you anywhere to get the access to this. So, but definitely go in and get the access to it. If you don't get the access, just subscribe over on YouTube. You'll get all of our videos still. You get notifications when we go live, and head over to cover1.net for Nate's next piece. We got Rob, Fernando, everybody's out there writing great stuff.
Anthony, there's a lot of great guys. Yeah,
a lot of great guys. We have a great team that we put together, and they're always pumping out the content. So follow everybody. Nate, I know that you're a super famous dude. I don't know if everybody in the chat box does or watching. So where can we find you on the social networks and things like that?
It's important that you find me on the social network because
he's doing God's work out there.
You can interact with me, which I have a couple of guys who pretty consistently interact with me and help me team up on Browns fans. So if you're into that, at Nate Gary WGR is where you can find me on Twitter. That's where I spend a lot of my time in terms of social media. So that's where you can find me.
And I'm Aaron Quinn. You can find me just kind of getting Nate going over at Aaron Quinn 716, just keeping Nate going. If he ever slows down, I'm there to just pump him back up to hey, don't take it easy on these Browns fans.
Here's a good gift. Boom.
That's right. So and you can follow us through Cover One at all the social media networks. Just search Cover One. You'll find us. You'll see that dope logo that we got. And you'll know it's us. So come back with us. Join us for the pregame and postgame shows. We'll go about 40 minutes prior to the kickoff. Do that for about 30 minutes. And then right after kickoff, Rob and I go on to talk about that game. And then every Wednesday, you can catch Nate and I here discussing the Bills all season long. We're going to have some great matchup shows this year where we bring on guys from other teams and talk about them because we don't get to follow all the teams.
Right.
So it's a great time to kind of learn about this next opponent. So thanks, guys, so much for coming out and joining us. Obviously, we can't do it without you. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Go Bills.